Brent Fisher, how you doing, man?
Doing fine. Happy to be here.
So kind of this week, or maybe it's going into 2 weeks, I'm not exactly sure, but we're taking a closer look at the Let Her Be Evil anthology that Cassandra Jones put together. And you and I are both a part of it.
Mhm.
We're going to take a deeper look at your story today, but it's an anthology that's right now nominated for an Ignatz Award, which is pretty exciting.
Mhm.
So we're just kind of getting the word out about the book just in general, but also if people want to go ahead and vote for it, we wouldn't be sad about that either, because that would be a notch on the belt. um, uh, and it's sort of, the whole point of the anthology is to just kind of let the female character in the book be evil for evil's sake. Doesn't really have a reason to be bad. And so let's see here. Your story, get to the front of it here. These things are supposed to help me get to the page, but I think it's easier to just flip straight through it. Your story is Underfoot. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, where did you come up with the idea for this?
Well, with Let Her Be Evil, I wanted to, well, first of all, the directive was so clear and unvarnished in terms of just having a directive of taking the gloves off. So I
Yeah,
want what to me was the most epitomous version of feminine unrestraint in terms of just evil. And a lot of people go towards contemporaneous narratives, and I guess Tolkien technically counts as contemporaneous, but even within his own lore, I wanted to go farther back. And every single script I write, I start with a quote that's kind of like the thematic thesis of my story. And I did a quote about Ungoliant um, bleeding the trees of Valinor dry at the behest of Morgoth or Melkor. And I just loved the idea of this giant spider. And it doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. In fact, it's probably one of the more um, direct stories that I've written, and where it's a bunch of kids. It's actually I'm taking a page a little bit from like Stephen King and a few others, where it's just a bunch of kids minding their own business, having that sideways summertime adventure, playing ball, and the ball gets kicked over into the neighbor's fence. And in this instance, the neighbor's fence is the underdark of an ancient city that's still unexplored due to its age.
yeah. That's a great premise to start off of. Rio Burton, we should mention, is the artist on this one. Did a fantastic job. And Tom Lynott did the letters. Um,
Both amazing creators in their respective spaces. Like I've been wanting to work with Rio for years. Rio's an astounding, accomplished, and continually growing fantasy creator, particularly in what I would consider to be high fantasy settings.
oh,
So I
okay.
wanted to make this definitely a fantasy story, and which is why I swung for the fences with kind of that Tolkien inspiration. And then Tom, I actually worked with him on another anthology, and I was just so smitten with how much he cares about the minor details in lettering that I asked. I actually got matched by chance. I wish I could say I asked him to come with me, but I was matched with him, and I just lost my mind in the email chain, which made Cassandra laugh. I go, Tom, and so I'm very happy to have them both.
That's awesome. Well, serendipity, I guess, right?
Mhm.
Um, so the story kind of starts out with these kids sort of playing ball. You can sort of tell that just by their names that it's not a you know modern city, or taking place in the United States anyway. You don't
Mhm.
exactly know what time period it is yet,
Yeah,
until you get a little bit further into it and you start to see what they're wearing and things like that, and the way that they're speaking about old gods,
exactly.
and the lady, the Underdark, right?
The
And
nice thing
so
about horror is that you get a little nugget of lore is all you need. So
yeah,
it's inherently synergistic with world building.
yeah, and it kind of lets the audience also build the world around them in their own minds, which is super nice to be treated that way as a reader. It's not like what they've done to a lot of franchises, where every little nook and cranny and corner of the universe has to be now explained because it's financially works out for the owners of the property. You know what I mean? But they kick the ball, and it disturbs these spiders, and they start talking about the Lady of the Underdark and these whole myths that, you know, she can tell if you're lying or something, right? Yeah, she eats liars, you know, and like you don't want to disturb her, and so the ball, you know, this character is kind of like, I don't care, you know, whatever, I don't believe in that. Uh, I'm never going into the Underdark anyway. And it's like, oh yeah, you are. You just kick the ball into the Underdark, into the sewers. So they go down. They get a torch. The ball starts floating down. So, oh gosh, they got to go even further in. And as they're going, you see this like bigger spider, you know, and this is pretty terrifying if you're an arachnophobe. Now I'm not, but my wife is. She'll scream 15 times a day, you know, to the point where I don't even react anymore. I'm just like, okay, because there's a spider in the house, gotta go get it. But yeah, I mean that even a softball size spider coming at me would be that'd be a problem. um, and so, you know, tries to take the thing out with the ball, and I love this shot, the way that the ball stretches like that. They did such a great job on that.
I mean, it's not a very complex story, and I really, this is more a love letter to, in
Yeah,
microcosm, of course, since it's an anthology. It's a love letter to this traditional 80s horror story structure, where it's like minor allegory, foreshadowing, and so yeah, it's just kind of keeps on building. That's another kind of like tense escalation moment where, and you also want the kid that's kind of walking into this, or the victim that's walking into this environment, to kind of deserve it, you
right.
know, and which is another kind of trope from that era of horror. And so I've really leaned into that as well, which is why he's not only sees the spider and his immediate reaction is to get out of here, you big ugly, and like kicks the ball at it and hurts it and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and then I love these shots as that it comes down and you just hear this like skitter sound behind them, and boom, you know, thing through the gut shot, fantastic. And then you get the goddess behind him, and then this moment here where the pace is just so well, she just out.
It's, yeah, exactly. It's just, and again, it's not a deep story, but if it's Let Her Be Evil,
Yeah,
you know, you've confronted the monster, like you've had that moment where there's not even malice in the gesture. At the end
no,
of the day, you know, her children must feed.
right,
uh
exactly.
but it's like that she's just, you know, evil for evil's sake. Perhaps she did enjoy it a little bit, you know.
Little
It's
bit.
how you interpret, you know, how it goes down. But I wanted that intrinsic natural fear to kind of seep in, you know, going where you shouldn't belong, paying the price, and, you know, and this sort of, there doesn't need to be a justification for the action other than the fact that you're trespassing. And that's one of the hallmarks of the stories. I think one of the ideas behind the book that I think drove Cass to create it was, you know, she's not, you know, no one's defending anything. No one's on a path to vengeance. There's no righteousness. It's just evil for evil's sake. It exists. It exists fully independently of the world around it and any justification. And, you know, it's allowed to simply be, which is exactly how I wanted to write the moment as well as the monster.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was a great premise for an anthology, and I think that you executed it perfectly. I think all the stories in this thing did a pretty yeah, and then the end is just great. You get the ball, you get the shot of the ball, and then the monster just sort of, or her just sort of receding into the darkness. You know,
Yeah, I love
hey
it.
kids, come, the rest of you kids come and get the ball, maybe, or something. You know, it leaves it up to the imagination.
I've developed an appreciation for horror that I wasn't necessarily thought I would. And the few times that I've been permitted to do so, it's unfortunately had derived a lot of pleasure from it. So I hope to revisit it again.
Yeah, horror is an interesting thing, and I always liked the genre. In fact, like probably like some of my top movies are like Nosferatu and Return of the Living Dead are two of my favorite movies, and those are horror. But I never really considered myself a horror guy. More of like I like just like weird things,
Yeah,
little things that are just like a little bit off. And all of a sudden, I got the chance to work on the Creep Show TV show and comic, and all of a sudden, the next thing I knew, I was like the go-to horror guy for a minute. Like, I guess it's just like people find out that you're capable of doing something, and they just keep coming to you. So you definitely know how to tell a horror story, and doing so in a short story is even more difficult, I think, than a long story sometimes.
it can be. It can be getting that
Yeah.
drumbeat in. I really I owe it all to making it an homage almost,
Hmm.
because you get that tight window, and I borrowed upon memories of Mike Myers and Freddy Krueger and that kind of thing for this, and I think it served me well.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think, are there really any like female, not that this isn't a slasher obviously, but when you bring up like, Freddy Krueger and Mike Myers, is there a female slasher? I don't think there really is there?
Carrie, um, but that's kind of
Yeah,
but there's a conceit to it that doesn't quite necessarily fit the mold.
right.
I think there are more into like the 90s, but in 2000s, but not really. And this kind of goes back to why Cass did the book.
Yeah.
Even when they do exist, there's this caveat of revenge,
Yeah,
this kind of
exactly.
grindhouse revenge,
Hmm.
roadhouse, motif. And what she wanted was unapologetic evil.
Yeah.
And there's the first two or three stories in this book, in my opinion, are a masterclass in getting into true atmospheric horror. I'm glad I was able to have more of a visceral gore monster,
Hmm.
but the idea of what a monster is so diversively explored in the volume. I hope this book really wins, because I think it deserves it for not only the novelty of its brief, but executing it.
Exactly. I mean, every single story in here knocks it out of the park, and it is absolutely worthy of the nomination. And not, I haven't read the other books in the category, but I can't imagine that they'd execute it as well as this. So, if you are able to, there's going to be a link in the show notes if you want to get a ballot for the awards, to go in there, and I think you have to like request a ballot.
You do.
Um,
Got to
and
request a ballot. Yep. And it's
yeah, and
also, I think, you have to go through some kind of form on their site.
yeah. So they don't make it super easy, but if you are eligible to, or everybody is, I guess, eligible, but if you want to vote, get in there, get it. And, we hope that you will vote for Let Her Be Evil for best anthology. Because really, like, obviously, like, we have a horse in the race, but it's pretty damn good.
It
you
really is.
know?
From layout and design to like the more like concrete brass tacks elements, to the more ephemeral of storytelling itself. It really does an amazing job. My favorite, I think, is the serial murderer, um, kind of the medical, without giving too much away, the medical
Right.
practitioner one. I think it's that one right there.
This one here,
That
yeah.
that might be the best story in the book, in my opinion. But I think they're all wonderful.
And such a diverse range of visual styles too, I will say.
Oh, 100%. And
it's
the nice thing
it's
about visual styles too is they're all accomplished. I think it needs like somebody who has been reading a lot or knows art, or is in the family, so to speak, I think, to kind of speak at length on it. But I'm only peripherally polished because I was raised by an artist. But uh, people tend to confuse voice for acumen, I think, on the layman level. And
Mhm.
but speaking broadly, every single one of these stories is an artist with a very refined and coherent voice that has a tremendous amount of skill in rendering their vision. I mean, every single one.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. I mean, it this thing's a complete package. So there are also copies available at Zoop.
Yep, Zoop
A
just
lot.
turned it on.
Yeah, I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes too. A lot of us will be around selling copies of it. I'm going to bring them to CXC in Columbus, where you are, at the end of the month. But if you want to vote, you know, the time is short. It's only till the 13th now. So yeah, you know, Brent, thanks so much for coming on, talking about your story in Let Her Be Evil. And do you have anything else on the horizons right now?
Yeah, I'm also the creative director at Dauntless Stories, which is an independent publisher that focuses on graphic novels done in the style of kind of like A24, amazing stories, Spielbergian scope. And we have a Kickstarter on right now for a collected work called Tell Them of Us.
Okay.
And you can find it if you search for Tell Them of Us on Kickstarter. And if you want to add post editing later, the link you can.
Yep.
But we're about halfway to goal. We got about 16 days left, I think. And it's a collection. Okay, let me set the stage really quick. We kind of, mankind has doomed ourselves. Some kind of ecological disaster that we could have prevented but kept kicking down the road. And it doesn't happen all at once. Using predictive modeling and science, we realize that the ecological collapse of the Earth is inevitable. And we don't have enough resources at our disposal to fully escape it or prevent it or fix it. So in this world that I've built conceptually, we use everything we have to build an elaborate time capsule to preserve as much of human memory, wisdom, consciousness, and experience as like a memoriam for others to study, learn from, like one final act of hubris to say that we were here and that it mattered. And we put it onto the spaceship that orbits around a dead Earth that's ostensibly found millennia, centuries later, by an alien crew, and it opens like a Star Trek episode, and you don't realize that they're all aliens till they pop their helmets off, and then you realize that the derelict vessel being explored in this week's episode is actually us. And as they activate the archive, a series of curated memories unfold through the interface that is witnessed by and experienced by the reader. And that's the anthology.
Well, you know, when the end times do come, NASA should hire you to to come up with some ways to preserve us, because that sounds like probably what we're going to have to do.
It revolves around themes of legacy and memory and stories, which will always be a constant theme for me, the power of storytelling. And it's like, basically, if you had the opportunity to leave something behind, what would your legacy be, knowing full well that all you could do in the face of oblivion was to try to leave something for someone to pull from and learn from and understand from, and maybe not repeat our mistakes.
Right. That's amazing. Yeah, I'll definitely put a link to the Kickstarter in the show notes as well. Anywhere that people can find you on social media?
Yeah, I have a past life, a current life as a collector of comic books and memorabilia, particularly Carol Danvers related. I
Okay.
have all Captain Marvel stuff. So my call sign on both Instagram and Twitter is Carol Collector.
Okay.
And my website has all my portfolio. It's BRENTFisher.net.
Awesome. Beautiful. Well, Brent, thank you so much for coming on. You did a great job on this anthology, as did everyone. And we really hope that people go out and snag this book and vote. Until next time, Brent, feel free to come on anytime that you have something that you want to show off, and we'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later.
Bye. Join my Patreon to see my work before anyone else, plus score physical sketchbooks, mini comics, and commissions delivered right to your door, and reading my new books, Something Seems Off and Three-Headed Pigman, as they are made. Go to my website to order original art, commissions, and my books, Lost Angels, Spectral: A Showcase of Fear, Chaotic Neutral, and more. Gray Matter Drip, The Art of Chris Anderson, is available now from Cosmic Lion Productions. Here are the upcoming conventions I'll be at the time of this recording. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. It helps spread the word. Thanks.